Hello folks, it's Stepping Stone 2 blog once more. It's the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born on the 4th of July. That's a little plug there for, is it Bruce?
I'm making Independence Day.
That's the one, yeah. So Mark, that's one for you, independent living. This is the day to go for it. Yeah, Independence Day. There was a film, I think, wasn't there? Independence Day.
Tom Cruise.
Tom
I
Cruise.
was born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
That's right. So we're going to revisit the topic of anxiety, which we've just discussed off dictaphone. That every one of us at some point in our lives will struggle with some kind of anxiety, and it still isn't recognised as an illness per se. Neither is depression, but the two are actually interlinked, and you can't have one without the other. You know, we talked about depression where you're quite flat and then you're quite high, and in the medical world now they call it bipolar. It used to be manic depression, but people decided that was too kind of stigmatic, so they changed it to bipolar, which sounds nicer, doesn't it? You've got manic depression, I've got bipolar. And of course, if you remember the royal family in the Victorian times, they had melancholia. Not depression, melancholia. Anyway, so we're going to start with Trey, and she's going to tell us what she thinks anxiety is. And then we're going to look at how you struggle and the things you do to try to alleviate it. Yeah? And if you're not sure, pass it on to the next person. Okay, Trey? Anxiety, what do you think it is?
Anxiety for me is when you get agitated and feel unsettled about a situation and fixated on a situation. So it could be the traffic. It's too loud for you and you can't cope with it, it's overload. It could be you're in, something's happening and you feel you can't cope with it, or it's overwhelming and your body reacts. You can feel sick, you can get headaches, you get like stomach problems, and it's almost like you can't focus properly. That's how I see anxiety.
Yeah, anxiety becomes a problem only when it starts to inhibit your everyday life, and it might be, and you've all encountered people perhaps in your daily life that have been quite agitated and quite animated, and that's quite often a very good predictor of the fact that someone's anxious. Yeah. Now we all have a fight or flight system that keeps us safe. Yeah. Anybody not heard of fight or flight? If you're frightened, you want to get away from the thing that's making you frightened, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Now, when you can't get away from the thing that's frightening, that's when the anxiety kicks in. Because anxiety is quite a natural state of being. We all at some point feel something like that. But it becomes clinical when you cannot get away from what it is that's worrying you. And it might be you don't actually know what's worrying you. Because that sometimes can happen. You know, you might just feel unsettled. Some people use that term of feeling unsettled. They don't know what to do with themselves. You know, there are many things that people mention. So that was good, Trey.
Yeah.
Take that one. Nigel, you've also had a bit of a history of anxiety. So what do you think it is, Nigel? How would you explain it to people listening to the blog now?
Well, if you worry about something and you've got something's come up and you're thinking, how am I going to cope with this? And the anxiety comes in, and thinking.
So tell me then, because anxiety is a feeling. Yeah, not everybody can actually express what it is. They can use the word, but don't necessarily know what it is. It's a feeling. Yeah. So tell me, Nigel, when you feel anxious, what does it feel like? What are the feelings when you're anxious?
Panic and stuff.
Yeah,
Panic.
Panic attacks are things that people have in times of extreme anxiety. And a panic attack is pretty much what it says. It's panic, the body's panicking. So it tells you to get away from what it is that's going on. But actually, neither one of you knows what's going on.
It vexes your skin as well.
Yeah, it comes through your skin as well.
Yeah, because you can notice your face goes all stuff. All they're different colour.
Yeah, it goes kind of red. Yeah, I mean, people, the blood rushes to your head if you get angry. If someone's angry, I mean, you've all seen the cartoon characters where someone's gone off on one, and smoke coming out and big red face. It's the same with anxiety, you know, it does colour your face. And you can normally tell if you look at someone, unless they've got rosacea, they're actually feeling quite anxious. And there's also certain kinds of body language that people show when they're anxious. That's one. This is one. Yeah, like that. And again, you'll come across this, Keith, in times when you've been working with people. And they're predictors that you know that person's not feeling so good. And if you're a support worker, obviously you've got to be aware of that and try to calm that person down. Back to you later on. Keith?
Anxiety can, some people thrive on it, others don't deal with it so well. It can make you feel tired.
Yeah, fatigue's a big one, yeah.
It's it can stop you doing things as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Perhaps if you've got hobbies or things that you'd normally do, if you're anxious, you maybe hold them back a bit, so you're not, you won't do your normal daily routines.
And that's when the depression creeps in, or people become almost locked in their home or room or whatever.
But I mean, if it carries on for periods of time, obviously it can affect your social life as well.
Absolutely.
You might not feel sociable or comfortable around big groups of people. So it could affect your daily life if it was an ongoing thing.
Is it something that's immediately obvious to the general person on the street when someone's anxious?
Not necessarily, unless people can know you, can see the triggers, or they know your normal behaviour, so therefore anything different to that they would notice. Family and friends would notice it, but not necessarily other people. Yeah,
that's interesting, that, because that is one of the barriers to getting at people who've got anxiety, because it isn't always immediately obvious. And that's right, that, Keith, you know, and that's why it's such a big problem, I think, anyway, because if you broke your leg and you can't walk, then immediately someone knows there's something wrong with you and you get that threat. But when it's something to do with an emotional dysfunction, it's not that straightforward.
I think there's that barrier as well, that if people are feeling anxious and they're not always open and talk about it with people,
yeah,
especially older people. You know, in going back in the day, it wasn't something you talked about.
The very stoic way, wasn't it? You know, sip up a lip, get on with it, and you know, not everybody can get on with it. And I actually personally don't believe that's the best thing. I think there's a definite case for being proactive in trying to move away from it, but you need the tools to do that. And a lot of people haven't got those tools to do that, you know. We talk about the toolbox analogy. But if you can give that person the tools, and then they can become more proactive, they can maybe start to move away from it. But it is difficult to get out of that, especially when it gets quite chronic, as you mentioned before there. And then it's really hard to get in to get that person to do something. You know, it affects every aspect of their lives.
It affects everything, yeah. It can affect your enjoyment of life. It can affect how you are with other people. You sort of can, and the problem itself can build up over time as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Becomes more and more laid. You mentioned, I mean, obviously I'm part of this particular category. Keith mentioned about older people.
Yeah.
Often that's, I don't mind being called older. Elderly's fine, Keith, I mean, go for it. We often don't realise that, because when people are getting towards the end of their lives, I mean, given that you get the 80 years and 10 and whatever, or it's slightly more now, people can become quite depressed and anxious about that particular forthcoming event, as in leaving this planet. You know, I mean, we talk about in people's files about the end of life, don't we? And yet we assume that older people, okay, we can hear you, that older people don't necessarily have that because they're not in the working world, you know, they aren't as busy as we are. But actually, and you mentioned about this, it starts to build up over time. And then as you get older, and my sister, Blanche, hello sis, actually said this, she used the phrase of, you almost become invisible once you get into a particular age group. Now, we're all in some way connected to social networks, which helps if you're anxious, or it stops anxiety coming on, well, given you with the right people, that is. But if you suddenly become disconnected from society, where you don't work anymore, you're retired, you know, you don't have the same network you used to have, you know, the same workmates you used to have. Yeah, I can hear you. All right, you've got a horn. Sorry about that, folks.
Gone disconnected.
I'll disconnect that, yeah, he's disconnected. Once you become disconnected, that can also create massive amounts of anxiety. You know, I mean, I do a lot of life observation, and I've noticed a couple of chaps that live near me that were miners at Whitehaven Way, and they're quite old and they're quite kind of decrepit, you can use that word, I can't anyway. Quite bad hips, knees, joints, all the rest of it.
My mum has that.
Yeah, it's quite a common thing when you get older.
Yeah.
I mean, I start to feel it more now, but I just keep moving. And I see these two chaps, and they regimentally go to the paper shop, to get the paper, and then they walk back. Now, that's them creating a routine that they probably haven't got anymore. A simple thing like go to the shop and say hello to the shopkeeper, get your paper, and then making your way back down. And you might meet somebody on the way down. Now, they probably, once they've done that, they probably get anxious.
And walk the dog.
Dog walking, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way of releasing stress. I know Nadia does that a lot, but she gets quite anxious. It's interesting, Katie. You brought all those things in there, because it isn't just that one standalone thing, is it? Getting anxious.
Loads of things. I mean, I think the modern day living as well. You're expected to have a lot more things than a lot of the older generation.
Yeah.
Was expected to have. It's all about what you own, what car you drive.
Oh yeah.
And it's all these added expectations now on life that wasn't necessarily there sort of like 40 years ago.
Oh, you're right. I mean, there's many layers have been added on now, and you've only got to look at the reality shows now. You know, they're made in Chelsea.
Television's probably one of the biggest.
Oh yeah,
it is. Yeah,
biggest culprits of that, making people feel that they've got to have a certain standard of life, got to achieve.
And that's just the royal family.
I knew you have to get them in there somewhere.
Television's a very negative thing in a way. It can be positive, but it's got a lot of negatives as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the BBC actually believe that everybody's living this wonderful life. You know, I mean, it's actually in reality most people are struggling to get by, unless you're lucky enough to have accrued a certain amount of money or whatever, like the royal family.
Yeah.
And of course, the absence of enough money to live on also causes anxiety. You know, there's more people now only just on the minimum wage who are meeting bigger and bigger bills, and that causes anxiety. But that's really interesting, that kid you brought up. I think when we do come back to this again, given that you're with us anyway, I'd like to explore that more, because you've opened up loads of different areas there around that one word that people often don't look at. So thanks for that, kid. I really appreciate that. Gary, what do you think anxiety is?
People who go on the top bar.
Are you talking about yourself now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And why do you think that would occur though, Gary, given that it's anxiety that you said it is?
Sometimes not anxiety. Sometimes it could be something I've eaten or eaten a bit too much
But anxiety can also upset your tummy.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fight or flight system again.
Yeah.
You know, your body starts to create different chemicals, and of course adrenaline comes in as well.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a dry mouth, or your tummy's a bit fluttery, that's a sign of nerves. You're worried about something, and then it actually become chronic. And people I know that have been on stomach medications for years, and it's actually to do with the anxiety. Well, if you dealt with the anxiety, you might actually not have to take all these medications. You know, at one time, milk and magnesia was a regular thing that was in a cupboard. You know, people. I mean, my gran, she took a spoonful every day of milk and magnesia, and then a stout. I was in Mackison.
I take peppermint sometimes.
Peppermint, yeah. But normally, I mean, obviously, we talked about your individual case, Gary. But you mentioned earlier, I remembered. We talked about the worry of something happening. And I know it's upset you, and you know, I've always been quite open with you. I've always said about things, and I didn't want to have to tell you, but I'd rather you knew, and then we could work with that as time goes on, because we're not going to lose touch.
Oh, no.
You know, we're always going to keep in touch. So, but yeah, it's been really, I would say for you for quite a while now, the conditions have caused quite a lot of high anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think it's been dealt with. We've discussed this when we went in the other room there the other day.
Oh, last week.
That's what it was, yeah. And I think that you need more and more input and spend more time with people like Keith. To keep you feeling safe and also valued. Because that's crucial as well. In you know, if you're feeling not valued, or you know, people tend to cut you out, then that makes you anxious as well. So it's been a roller coaster for you, Gary.
Has it?
But I am optimistic that we will get you through those stormy waters. And we talked about that last week in the cupboard, didn't we?
Yeah.
Not the cupboard. We weren't in the cupboard. Just ignore that, folks. We're in a room.
Downstairs.
Yeah, we're in a room with a cupboard, or maybe even two cupboards.
Yeah, I've got two. One, two.
Yeah, I love these podcasts. You know, we you don't get these online. You know, this is like real podcasty stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Gary, for that. Lucy, I think you obviously over time you've had some difficult periods to go through, especially with the loss of family. What would you say your feelings were at that time when you'd lost many people in your family? How did it make you feel?
No.
Yeah, because you were quite tearful, weren't you? And that's something, again, people reach a certain point where the anxiety becomes too much, and all of a sudden they feel quite tearful, and they don't actually know the one thing that's making them feel tearful, but that's the body trying to release the emotion. Because the word emotion is actually to do with movement. The energy movement through your body. Check out the Greeks, you know, with health. Emotions can get trapped. The Chinese, I think they call it because they use acupuncture things, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
To try and get those blockages through. So when you're feeling very, very sad, that's that emotion, the emotion coming out. It's moving through. The body doesn't really want to cope with that. So let's get rid of it because it's made me feel unwell. But you've been really tough, Lucy, haven't you? I've always admired you for that because it's been a real bad trip for your family, and you still come here, you still turn up, and you take part, you have a laugh and joke, you know. So a lot of people could learn from Lucy, you know, the way she's coped with all this. Because I mean, was it how many you lost in the short space of time? Was it 4?
Quite a lot.
Yeah, Lucy lost quite a number of members of family. I think you know that, Kate. Yeah. So you've really struggled with anxiety and high emotion, but I think we can learn from Lucy as we go along.
Yeah.
Because you know you do art in that as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy, for that. Mark,
all right.
Mr. High Anxiety, who's currently on the floor, folks. He spends most of his time on the floor. Anxiety, Mark, what does it mean to you and how does it feel?
Unsettled.
Unsettled?
It's a bit noisy and all that. It starts it off, doesn't it?
Yeah, it tends to affect you.
Yeah.
We discussed that last time, didn't we, I think?
Yeah.
So, what are the feelings, Mark, that you get when you're anxious? What does it feel like?
It's when you can't settle. You're always getting up all the time, trying to get away.
Yeah, and again, that's the fight or flight, folks. You know, it's the body doesn't know why the hell it's going on, but it needs you to get away until we can find out what's wrong. And that's a real biggie, that one, because I know Nigel, we talked about it with Jackie, Jacqueline, who's Nigel's girlfriend. She suffered with really, really bad high anxiety, didn't she, Nigel?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
And we talked about Woolworths. It used to be in Workington. Remember the Woolworths?
Yeah.
Good old I like Woolworths. They used to be one in Cockermouth as well, didn't they?
I like Woolworths as well.
Was that W.H. Smith's in Cockermouth?
That's just Smith's.
There used to be one in Cockermouth, didn't there? But Woolworths was working, wasn't it? And
Yes, it was working.
Carlisle. And Jacqueline was frightened when she was in a state like yourself, Mark, of going into work. She was too busy. It was always busy in Woolworths. Remember that?
Yeah, it
the
was.
doors were going, etc. And we spent more and more time working together to get in there, just to try to override those feelings and just try to get comfortable in that space. And that's something I think that needs to be done with you, Mark. Because if you constantly, and Keith brought this up, if you constantly try to get away from what it is that's bothering you, it can become a bigger problem. And it's harder to find your way back. You know, it affects all the other areas of your life. But we are going to be exploring that, Mark, over time with you. I don't know about your service. I know Chevelle's very proactive in your service, but
She's up yesterday.
well, that's good. That's good. She's keeping up what we agreed, and I know that she will give you that input because she understands. But we'll try to support her on that as well, and do some work with you as well. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I'm going to mention as well, because I actually wrote a couple of pieces about anxiety, because I myself struggle with that and have done for many years, which is connected to trauma. I've had periods of depression that I've worked with over time. More recently, it kind of reached a crucial point, and a number of things that happened that predisposed me to become more chronic. Luckily, I've been able to continue to work with that, but it's an ever-present. If I had to explain to someone what anxiety is, we could be here for quite a long time, because you probably noticed when Keith mentioned about it, you can't just sum it up in one little sentence. You know, and this again is one of the problems we've got in dealing with people. You know, it's almost like they have to tell you right away what's wrong, you know, and you can't. And you know, how do you articulate the feelings you get when you're anxious and depressed to sometimes a complete stranger? You know, you go in, you sit down, well, what's wrong? Now you can say you broke your leg, or you've cut your hand, or sprained your wrist, but how the hell do you get into all the stuff that you talked about, Keith? Because that's how it inhibits your life. You know, it's not just one thing. I mean, if Greg should tomorrow, you'd be well shafted.
Yeah, you're too right.
You know, I mean, Mark, this is not to the detriment of Mark, Mark isn't as able to articulate his feelings as well as other people. So for quite a long time he was left with those feelings and couldn't actually tell people. And that's the other thing as well we've got to be careful of. If you've got people in your service, like with yourself, Mark, you have to be aware of how that person's feeling and give them time to talk. You know, even if they can only say a few words, well, tell me how it feels. You know, because that's the one we don't always do. Tell me the feeling. Because sometimes people can tell you more about the condition by just saying how they feel. And you did that earlier with unsettled. That's a massive one for me. If someone says to me they're unsettled, I've got to become proactive, because there's something else going on. And quite often all the things that you mentioned, Keith, and you have to address those. So folks, if you're listening and you go to your GP and you want to discuss your condition with them, then good luck with that one. But if you can actually say to your doctor, if you've got a good relationship with the GP, tell them how you feel and tell them how it affects your life. Yeah? Now, we're not going to do the second part of this. We'll come back to this, because we're going to talk about the strategies that you use. Yeah? But because it's such a deep subject, I think we'll explore it in stages. And I think Keith basically highlighted exactly how complex this condition is by all the things, and he had many more to come out with, didn't he? There's many more things. And I think it's safe to say as well, Keith, that you've also struggled with anxiety at times in your life.
Oh, definitely.
Do you think do you think then that, Keith, by the very fact that you have done, but you've got on with life the best you can, that you can maybe help other people to cope?
I'd hope so, yeah.
I mean, just the very fact that you've mentioned earlier in the podcast there, all the things that you know, how people are affected. People listen who struggle with anxiety, some of those things are going to help them. They're going to go, oh yeah, I feel that way, that's what it is. And then maybe when they go to the GP again, or whoever it is, the practitioner, they can mention that. You know, it's up to the practitioner then to open their mind up and say, okay, let's explore it, let's work with this. You know, because normally it's a narrow situation when you go to counselling. You know, and they normally want to get you off the list to get the next one in, because it's all starting to pile up. But really, people need holistic counselling, where you look at all these things over time. Yeah? So tell me then what you think anxiety is, Jen.
It's when people start shouting.
How does that make you feel?
Anxious.
What's that feeling that you get when people are shouting and carrying on or whatever?
Frightened.
Fear. Nobody mentioned fear, did they?
No.
I was like shaking a lot. And then my stomach went turned over.
Again, another classic in anxiety.
And I felt sick.
Yep, nausea that can be caused. I think Keith mentioned fatigue as well earlier on.
Then I was crying.
Yeah, emotions. Lucy mentioned that earlier.
And then I got back into my house. I put radio on. Started calling, I couldn't concentrate, so I just took off out again. Couldn't concentrate.
Yeah, well, you mentioned again about how it affects people when they think and, they can't function as well.
Thinking that breaks down.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's not something that you've consciously chosen to do. Your body shut you down. It's trying to deal with this and it doesn't know what to do. And obviously, if you don't know what to do, then you both, oh God, what's going on here? But you mentioned fear. I did a part of a degree on the counselling to do with fear and sadness. Now, those two things are in the same bed. You can feel very sad and very, very frightened. You can feel very frightened, but also very sad. Now, fear is quite often not brought into the equation when we talk about anxiety. And yet, that very fear is the thing your body's trying to get you away from. It's making you feel frightened, so you get away from what it's trying to work out what's going on. So fear is a massive one. And it might be just the fear of going out.
Yeah.
It might be the fear of meeting someone that you know is probably not going to be very nice to you. And fear is not a nice thing to feel. I mean, we talk about danger where, your car's flying down the road and you jump out of the way. Yeah, you're protecting yourself. But we talk about the emotional fear. The fear of things that you can't always deal with. It might be you don't like going to work because you're not happy with the work environment. That can cause a sense of anticipation, fear. Am I going to deal with this in the best way? Am I going to lose my temper? Am I really so pissed off with this? I'm going to, probably show myself up because I'm going to get angry. Anger, fear, anger, sadness, they're all in the same bed. And we are going to explore them over time, and then we're going to look at how we deal with them. I've got a book on anger. These two are laughing. And you know what? I got angry reading it. It's doing me head in. You talk about anger, you're making me angry. So I keep trying to come back to it, and I get frightened as I go to the bookshelf to take it off. Am I going to get angry and will lose my temper? I'll have a go. Oh, what? Page 2. Back in the bookshelf. So we got
Back in the bookshelf.
Page 2.
Just on the subject of pages, I've been reading a book on quantum physics, and I'm on page 8, and I've had the book for a year and a half, so I'm really working well now. I've googled it a number of times, quantum physics, quantum science, and it keeps bringing me back to the same page. So I'm heading this year, hoping before Christmas to get on to page 9. Yeah? So if you want to check out quantum physics, please do. And if you get beyond page 8, tell me what's on page 9. I'll see if I can work it out.
I'm going to celebrate Christmas on American Independence Day.
And get your Christmas tree taken down. So thanks again, folks, and I do hope when you listen to this that it in some way, shape or form raises your awareness, perhaps helps you with your own situation, whether it be anxiety, depression or whatever. And if you do have any comments to add, I would really appreciate that, because maybe somebody else can then chip in, and maybe that'll help somebody else. It'll widen the awareness. So, but if they're bad comments, we've got to ignore them. We only accept good comments on our podcast. Okay? If there's any trolls out there, I'm going to get angry with you. I'm going to get my book off the shelf and then control myself till I get angry again. Okay, so on that calm moment, we're going to recess now for a cuppa. And we'll come back again next week and we'll revisit this topic.
Harry, I have something to tell you. You know, when you get anxious, can that, if you know, if I go out with a wear off it or not, I can still get angry.
Sorry, Jen, say that again. I'm not totally certain of what you.
You know when I'm anxious?
Yeah.
And I go out places.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it'll help me to do things or not?
Right, well, I mean, we won't go too deep into that, but this is something we've discussed with Nigel, and we'll put this on this podcast because it kind of leads into the strategies that you would use to get through, but also the downsides of those choices, because you can feel lonely and anxious when you're out and about. You can feel lonely and anxious when you're sitting in your own home. So people quite often go out just to get away from feeling anxious and lonely. But what you tend to do is you create another set of loneliness and anxiety. Because if you go off on a bus ride, Nigel, you know this, you might not know anybody.
No.
Yeah, they're all whittering away, a bit of a chat, and we've got such, and you're sitting there, and you actually start to feel more alone.
Yeah.
So it could be detrimental, but what I would suggest is, and we've had this with Mark and Nigel, is that you buddy up with someone so you're not alone. It might be somebody you get on really well with, you know, it could be your support worker, you know, have a little jolly down the Windermere or Ambleside or whatever. And quite often, if you're in good company, I know, Gary, you and Keith get on well together. You know, Gary knows he's going to have a good time when he goes down to that place. So that's going to help your day. It's the same with you, Jen. But if you're going out looking to replace that loneliness, that can be detrimental to you. It can actually make you feel worse because you then bring it back in with you into your house. But we'll explore it, and I think it might be a good thing if we look at what we can do to help you with that one, James. I know it's a worry for you, it always has been. And you've got in some kinds of problems as well because of that as well. That's a wrap, thank you.